Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer, out on the East Coast, rocking the 2008 Celtics championship tee for this one. Might be a closeout game here. 3-1 is the series as we are back in Boston for Game 5 now. Going to see if this Mavs team can prolong this series even further. We've got best bets in this one. Also got play a props up in a separate episode, so make sure to subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us the rest of this postseason as long as we got finals games. Also want you to head to thelines.com and use everything we have up on the site. Still throwing up plenty of NBA content for you guys as we keep going here in this championship finals. So, Nate, let's go ahead and jump right into your first best bet of the night here.
Yeah, I mean, so the Celtics, they threw that game away. We know we can throw it in the garbage bin and just move on. And I mean, -6.5 is a decent amount. I don't know if they're going to run the Mavs off the floor that much. So I will take -2.5 for just the second half for these Boston Celtics. And I feel like that covers two scenarios. I feel like it covers that they do trail at the half or it's tied and it's close. And then they win. Maybe they cover, maybe they don't, but they win the second half. Or they're leading at the half and they just continue to pile it on and the Mavs let go of the rope because they're in a situation much like what they just did to the Wolves, right? Where the Wolves were like, yay, we didn't get swept. Like, what a moral victory. And then just got absolutely annihilated. I mean, this is a chance for these Celtics to respond, as Jaylen Brown said. Like, obviously they didn't have anything from the get-go and they just they let go of the rope basically in the first quarter, unlike the Game 3 where they were able to come right back. They just had nothing in terms of like motivation, energy, anything. And they knew they had a game in the bag at home where they do have a true home court advantage. I know I said like Dallas is great on the road, but like that doesn't overcome the fact that like these Celtics, the energy in that building is going to be so much that I guess that's your biggest concern is that like guys like Jason Tatum seem to kind of at times press because of that energy. Guys like Jaylen Brown. I mean, Jaylen just came off a game where he's pressing, where he was like, I'm going to go out there and get my finals MVP. Like, I'm the run stopper. I'm the leader. And that was part of the first quarter collapse. But really, I mean, it's just kind of an uncharacteristic game from guys like Drew, from both the Jays at the same time, from Mazzulla, who will never really own up to not having the right game plan. But I mean, he didn't have to make adjustments after they won 3 straight and were fantastic in Game 3. But clearly coming out with the exact same kind of offensive ethos, like Dallas was ready for whatever they were going to do. They made them stagnate immediately from the very first possession. It was an awful Jason Tatum shot, and they had nothing. So I expect a couple wrinkles here for the Celtics and for that to kind of progress as the game wears on. And Dallas at the same time, like we're looking at Luka to kind of slow down as the game wears on. Of course, the crowd helping them get back and close this out. And yeah, I got the 08 shirt on because I mean, maybe they're watching some clips of what happened in that series. That's really the only relevance here to bring it up. But I mean, the Celtics did lose Game 5 in that series 16 years ago. I think the very same day this game will be. And then they came back home and won by 39, including by 16 in the second half. This Celtics team, after losing against Miami and Cleveland. Actually, they lost the second half in that Miami game because they crushed them so bad in the first half, but beat Cleveland by 5 in the second half there. Beat Indy after they should have lost Game 1 by 10 in the second half to win that Game 2. And really what we're looking at more in terms of the pattern is after they shoot really poorly from 3, they come back and they shoot well and they win. They win almost every single time. They hit 15, 16 threes. And so that's been the pattern throughout these playoffs, and expect them to hit a few early and that to kind of set the tone.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think to a degree we should also just like make clear that we think the Celtics are going to win this game. The money line ain't really worth it. I think we're both of the mindset that like if they win by 3, they win by 8, they win by 12, they win whatever. Like this might not be the closest game of all time. Once again, because of like you were talking about here with this bet, the propensity for the team who's losing at this point to just go, oh, okay, got it. We'll 1, 2, 3 Cancun or wherever NBA players go these days. So yeah, I think all that makes sense. And the outs that you have here for this bet to hit at -2.5 in the second half, they don't, it could be either way. It doesn't matter if it's a blowout or not, kind of to the point you're making. If we're watching Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard play against, AJ Williams and whoever else, or AJ Lawson, or whomever else they're throwing out there, right, at this point for the Mavericks. Like, even the bench play probably a lot better, and it's a lot easier to go out there and seek buckets as a guy like, even the sort of Jordan Walshes of the world, because of the fact that you're winning and everything's positive for you. So I agree that, like, if it comes down to the bench play in the second half, like, Celtics bench is going to outplay the Mavs bench, and we saw that in the fourth quarter, where they played the entire fourth quarter, and everybody, Joe Mazzulla gave it up, and I could see Kidd doing that too. I'm not going back to a fourth quarter bet. I'm going to just kind of pivot or parlay off of yours anyway, and just sort of segue into Luka under 40.5 points and assists, Boston money line. And if you parlay those together, plus 138, I was really looking for a way to maybe get a under on a Celtics player. And I do think that, we'll talk about that more in the player props episode. I'm not scared to take an under on some of these Celtics players by any means. And I'm not afraid to take an under on the game either, which, crawled to, what was it, like it ended at 206, 207 or so, because of that fourth quarter going over, because it was already over. And I'm a little bit scared that that's going to be the case again. But as far as Boston winning this game, that's where I'm at. It's really tough for me to see Boston coming out with the same sort of, the lack of intensity or lack of focus, like really bad turnovers. They got out, it was 13 turnovers through like 3.5 quarters for this team, 3 quarters or so. And so, everything was just sort of sloppy. Now they're going to come in with a little bit more focus, but kicking it off with the Luka under, I know that you're with me in this one too. And I ended up playing this late last game as well, right before tip. It got up to about 42.5 points and assists for Luka. Now it's at 40.5, and I'm still good with it. His assist prop is all the way down to 7.5 in this game. Wild times watching Luka's props drop like that. But that's what you expect for the Celtics. They're not a team that gambles, so there's not going to be spot up shooters open. They're not a team that's going to double. We've seen that. We mentioned it last video. They blitzed Luka for 3 minutes after he went crazy in that first half, I believe in game 2. But now we're looking at a situation where I don't think they're scared of him, to be honest. Like, they've shown that even in the last game. So with all that in mind, like, I don't think Luka's going to do both. I'm also really okay with under 32.5 points. And I kind of wish there was I wasn't able to find anything that would be like a Luka over in the first half, Luka under in the second half kind of prop. You'd probably have to go to like a DFS site like Prize Picks or something of that nature to even be able to maybe find that. But if you look at him in the first half, 20.5 points per game in the finals and 2.8 assists per game, 9 points per game in the second half, alongside 3 assists in the second half. And granted, there have been fewer minutes played for him a lot in the second half because of blowouts that we've seen multiple times throughout this series now. But it's also just, dude wears down, man. It's straight up that simple. Kyrie, they've been relying on him to do everything in the second half as Luka just sort of starts to crumble a little bit more, at least energy-wise, health-wise, even just usage-wise for him. It just drops a bunch. And part of it is like he's getting his in while he still has the energy, it seems like. He's also gone under this number in 13 of 21 playoff games now. So I'm kind of at a point, Nate, where I'm just like, look, we've got enough sample size. I'm going to use the playoffs as the stats that these guys have put up in the playoffs as my go-to, and just say, like, look, anybody can come out and do what they, can have a good game here. What do you think the volume of the ceiling of the volume for each player is and stuff like that? And for Luka, like, yeah, he's going to be up at around 26, 27 shots, but that's also been good for about 12 makes per game. And he still isn't really making free throws. He was a little better last game, but I still am not really worried. Even if he gets 9 or 10 free throws, I expect him to make like 6 of them. That's where he's been at for the playoffs. So I'm not scared of him at all. He's averaging 37 points and assists combined in the offs. He's gone over just one time here in the finals as well. And he is a little bit better on the road with his numbers here in the playoffs. But once again, like, I'm going to, the outs for him to go under include this game being over, at the end of the third quarter, essentially. And I don't really see Luka as the guy, which he has not proven to be the guy who plays well from behind. I think we know that the bulk of the comeback in game 3 that was short, it came up short, but the bulk of that comeback was Luka not doing too much in the second half. He had 9 points in the second half of that game. So, and then Boston's just not going to be as bad. There's just no way, right? Like, there's absolutely no way. Even if neither of us are like, well, let's 40 points from Tatum. Like, I'm not banking on that. I don't think it's going to be that type of game, but I think it is going to be like Derek White threes at the end of possessions, maybe some Al Horford corner threes. Like, it's just going to come from all over. It's going to be another team effort. These dudes just vibe off of the makes that their teammates make. The home stuff for them is wild, as we know, all season. I think the first half is in play for them to be winning. So I think it's going to take a collapse from Boston at the end of this game, which is feasible. But I still think the money line is a good look, and that is the only reason that I'm a little bit scared of, like, getting the 7 points. Like, if it is if it's somewhat close in the fourth quarter and we see a run from the Mavs, then that could cut into this and get it down to like 5 points or so before they do throw in the towel as time's running out. So all that said, like, yeah, Boston, they were finally out 3-pointed by the Mavs in this last game, in part because their whole team just ended up sitting with 4 minutes left in the third quarter. But they still had 14 threes in this last game. And I don't know that Dallas is going to be able to keep limiting it like that in game 5. And that'll be the downfall for them once again, is the 3-point disparity.
Yeah, and Boston's been able to limit the 2 stars for the most part. I mean, especially their playmaking ability, which is why, yeah, it's so good to pair the assists. I mean, I know you're looking to fade Kyrie too at 28.5. Do you prefer the Luka parlay because of the number, or is there a stronger correlation that if Boston holds him down, they should win?
No, I mean, I actually, it's a good question, because I do think the Kyrie plays a little bit better. I like the added fact of, like, dude has, I don't know, he touched some kind of spiritual entity somewhere when he stepped on Lucky, the leprechaun. So I like him to go under, especially because of the Boston crowd and him being there, and just seeing like that's totally in his head, where he's only gone over this number twice now since he left Boston, and then has come back and played there. I added the Luka one here in part because I also wanted to make sure I got that out there, to be honest. But yeah, honestly, it's about 50-50. I prefer the Kyrie bet slightly. You do get slightly better juice with the Luka under, as that is a little bit riskier. There's slightly lower implied odds there for Luka.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I'm with it. As you know, yeah, I'm going to take this prop as the under in general for Luka. Like LeBron, he is not from a mental standpoint. Like, great player, Luka is, but like to think like he's going to do what LeBron did in that game 6 in the Garden, like the amount of like chutzpah and mental fortitude it takes to just like shut down a building like that. This ain't the Minnesota Timberwolves in game 5 either, Luka. Like, I don't think he's going to come in here and drop 35 in this particular game. Like, Dallas is going to have to play great as a team again, which is basically what they did in game 4. It's not like Luka, carried that blowout by himself. But moving on, second pick here. I like the first quarter over, which is 53.5. It's 54 at some spots. And I think instead we can take both teams to get 25 at even money here at DraftKings, which would be better odds than the total here, and could still have an out if it is like 25-26 or whatever. Because I do trust Dallas and Kyrie both to come out strong, as they have in each first quarter here in the last 3, since, game 1 was kind of a throwaway. I mean, Luka has 13 in all 3 of these, and Kyrie has 8, 9, and 9. And particularly since Porzingis went out, they've been able to get themselves going, just going to the rim, right? I mean, they barely even hit a 3 in this last game, and they were just parade to the rim, starting Dallas's insane points in the paint total. They have 21 paint points in the last 2 here without the zinger, 125 offensive rating, scoring 65% of their points in that area. And Boston had struggled against like Indiana, for example, without zinger. Like Al Horford is not protecting that paint by himself, and the pace is also a huge discrepancy here. I mean, for the series, 100 pace in the first, 87 in the second, but the last 2, again, without Porzingis, 103 pace in the first, 84 in the second quarter. Boston is doing what they do best, 74% assist rate. Dallas is doing what they do best with 25% assists. No assists, just getting both those guys who are mercenaries scoring the basketball, being like, all right, you're not going to double us. Like, you're going to stay home on all the shooters, so we have to make you do something, and that involves coming out strong. I mean, which is just such a tone setter. It's such an emphasis on tone setting for these teams to do so, especially after what happened to Boston here in this last game. And so, yeah, they only got to 21 in game 4. The previous one, as we know, similar script unfolded with the Mavs coming out hot. Boston still gets to 30 because our boy Hauser off the bench helps spark that. And then game 2, where nobody could hit anything, but still quarter 1, because of this pace, Mavs up 28-25. And the Celtics actually shot 1 for 9 from 3 in that quarter, still got to 25 points. Dallas is a combined 5 for 16 from 3 in these last two and has gotten 30 points because of the paint points I mentioned. So I think both teams are going to be able to come out scoring. And of course, because it's the first quarter, we have more pace and more opportunities, more, closer feel to a regular season pace and scoring in the first quarter. And then everything tightens up immediately.
Yeah, for sure. And I honestly didn't even initially realize that you liked the over in Q1 and really both teams at 25, which is a nice look. I mean, I think we just need the Mavs to come along for that, right? Like, I think we're both pretty confident in Boston coming out strong. Is Dallas going to match that? And to your point that you made, essentially, are the two stars for Dallas going to match that? I would say yes. I think there's probably a good look at, like, if you can parlay either of those stars on Dallas over in the first quarter, first half, under in the second half, I think that's still a look. I mean, it's just crazy how much we see the energy just sort of sapped out of Luka once he gets into that second half. He's really going to need to kind of pull it together there if they have any shot. But in the first quarter, yeah, I still do think both these guys come out, and I think points are had. I love an under in the second quarter. And I briefly mentioned it last game, and I'm going back to it now, which is under 53.5. And you get that at minus 102 on FanDuel. Much better number there than on DraftKings. Well, let me make sure I didn't lie to you. Yeah, yes, it is FanDuel that it's better at. DraftKings, it's like minus 118 for this to go under the 53.5 total in quarter two. So, like, look, it's crazy, but like this second quarter is actually lower scoring than the fourth quarter. And that's something that we've attacked multiple times now in this series, is the under on the fourth quarter. I still think the fourth quarter is probably good. It's got a little bit more unknown to it, though, than the second quarter at this point. Because of the blowouts, we're actually seeing more bench time in the fourth quarter, but it's bench versus bench, right? And what I was looking at here in the second quarter is it's bench versus starters a lot more for both teams, and predominantly Dallas, who's playing a much larger rotation than the Boston Celtics. But that's kind of what I was also looking at. It's like, okay, this thing goes down to an 87 pace in the second quarter. It's gone under 54 points in every single game of this finals. And the highest scoring finals quarter two was 52 points in the in game two there. And that the Celtics had 29 points in that quarter. Guys like Hauser shot well as well. Like the subs were shooting pretty well, but you're getting a lot of like Dallas backups versus 3 or 4 starters for Boston still on the floor. And really the bench points that you're getting from Dallas are predominantly Derek Lively, who's only considered a bench player because he's not starting, but he's in the first 3 to 4 minutes of the first quarter in every single series here. And now every game of the series. And now we're still looking at like probably a little bit more Gafford in the second quarter still. But either way, like that pace dropping, the bench players coming out and getting big minutes, more minutes than any other quarter, except for the fourth, like I said, where it's totally skewed by the fact that there's been 2 games now that basically the losing team has given up before the fourth quarter basically even started, with a lot of THJ minutes coming in that third quarter. Maybe we'll see him. We still have props up for him, by the way, for Timmy Hardaway Jr., because look, there's 3 dudes that have scored, by the way, 5 threes in a quarter now in the finals. Tim Hardaway Jr., Ray Allen, and I'm blanking. It's Steph Curry, right? Yeah. You might have heard of him as the greatest 3-point shooter of all time. But regardless, like the bench being out there for Dallas so consistently in the second quarter, Luka and Kyrie's minutes getting staggered more in the second quarter than in pretty much any other one at this point as well. In the first quarter, they're both getting above 10 minutes per game. In the second quarter, that dwindles down. You see 11 and a half minutes for Luka, slightly under 10 minutes for Kyrie in the second quarter. So you're seeing Luka come out, start that Q2. And that's been the rotation. The only real sort of consistency in J Kidd's rotation. That's why, once again, I come back to going, it's a little bit easier to project what's going to happen in Q2 now, because J Kidd's rotations sort of just become whatever they need to be according to what he thinks in third and fourth quarters of this series. In Q2, it's been pretty consistent. We know what we're getting. We're getting a little bit of rest for both Luka and Kyrie. And like I said, with everything just slowing down that much because of the first quarter, I think it's pretty highly correlated that they just, both teams come out, ton of energy, probably use a little bit too much of it in the first quarter. And in part because they have to. One of these two teams has been wicked hot in the first quarter of pretty much every game of this series, and meaning the other team is expending a good amount of energy to come back and keep it close so that this thing isn't over by the first quarter, which has now happened in 2 of these games as well. So I think that a lot of that just means under 54 points is another thing we can come back to, as the average is at 45, like I said so far.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Jason Kidd is partially responsible for this dip because he's just been so wild with his bench rotation, and it's like sapping the confidence of all these guys because they have no idea. Like, yeah, you bring up Tim Hardaway, he's like, "Am I getting in the game?" I mean, we don't know. And recently, I mean, after Dante Exum played really well, a kid goes like, "Oh, I need to find him more minutes," and it's like, yeah. So I mean, get him in the game, and make it consistent. I mean, he is plus 155 is Exum to hit a three in this game, or his scoring prop is at 2.5 points. I mean, I don't have any like in-depth analysis beyond that because it's so low, and it's just like if he plays 14 minutes, he's probably gonna get a real clean look here. So I'll just make that kind of a bonus pick here. But yeah, I agree with you on the second quarter for whatever reason that it's the pace is just slowed down so much immediately. And the Mavs have really searched for answers when one of their guys is out or at least a little gas from the first quarter effort.
Yeah, well, I'll put a slight bit of analysis on the Dante Exum over 2.5 points. I can tell you that he's gone over that number in 85% of games in the playoffs when he gets 9 minutes. If he just gets 9 minutes, he's pretty good for 3 points at this point. Like he's 7 of 9, so it's a pretty nice hit rate for him in those games where he, like I said, he's actually getting a few minutes here. And yeah, I think Kid's messed up this series in a number of ways with the rotation. That's for another time, but I think Exum is a really big help and would be nice to get him in there. So that's all the time we have for you here. About 5 plays for you in the best bets episode that we have up right now. Also want to check out the Playa Props episode separate from this, bringing both of those to you each and every day now that we have these NBA Finals games. So make sure to subscribe to that page. And until we see you next, happy betting.